Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Tao Te Ching, Chapter 3. Not overrating the virtuous and able keeps the people from fighting. Not overvaluing precious goods keeps the people from stealing. Not laying eyes on desirable things keeps people's hearts from being confused. Therefore, the wise governs by emptying the hearts and filling up the bellies, by weakening the will and strengthening the bones, by keeping the people free of knowledge and desires, and by keeping those who know from acting it out. Acting without doing invariably leads to peace. So let's see. As always, or not always, but almost always in the Tao Te Ching, we have at first, we have a paragraph about how the world is. It's a statement of facts, actually, the first 3 sentences. And afterwards, we have a paragraph about what to do with that. Okay, so the first 3 lines we have: not overrating the virtuous and able keeps the people from fighting, not overvaluing precious goods keeps the people from stealing, and not laying eyes on desirable things keeps people's hearts from being confused. So in these first 3 lines, we find a description of what one should not do if one doesn't want to fight, doesn't want people to steal, and doesn't want to be confused. And well, it basically is talking about how to where to put your focus not on. Okay, so basically, not overrating the virtuous and able keeps people from fighting is, of course, talking about the problem of competing against each other. So if you put your focus on who's the best, then what automatically happens is that people will try to be the best, which will lead to competition, which, if it is overemphasized, leads to fighting. Okay, fighting about, in this case, the ego, about who is the most virtuous, who is the most able, who can run the fastest, who can, whatever it is, but it brings people to compete. And as always, it's in this book, you always have to keep in mind that it's about yin and yang in the end. So it's always about finding the middle. Okay, so competing is not generally bad, but if it is overemphasized, if all the focus lies on who's the best, then it's very likely that people start to fight over that. And in the second line, not overvaluing precious goods keeps the people from stealing. It's basically the same, but with the focus on precious goods, which would always mean money, which would mean nice cars, and so on. So if you overemphasize focusing on precious goods, then, well, people will, of course, think a lot about that. And in the end, people will start to choose crooked ways to get those precious goods or the money or whatever. So you will end up having corruption, end up having stealing, and well, that's not really what you want in a society, right? So, and the last one, not laying eyes on desirable things keeps people's hearts from being confused. Basically, this is kind of an explanation for the first two sentences. Because wherever you put your eyes, so to speak, you kind of focus your mind on, and if your mind is too busy thinking about desirable things, then it will be confused and it won't be able to to pay attention to all the other important things, which the virtuous human being should be paying attention to. So yeah, laying eyes on desirable things, whether it be on the ego side or whether it be on the stuff side, is always a bad well, it tends to be a bad thing if you overemphasize that part. Okay. So, and now comes the part about what the wise man does with this fact. So, therefore, the wise governs by emptying the hearts and filling up the bellies. So, and I should point out that this is obviously a chapter which is dealing with how a good official or a good emperor would lead the country. Okay, so Lao Tzu in his work Tao Te Ching is switching between who is he addressing. Okay, at some points he addresses like sociological topics, as in this one. So how do you keep a country like safe and the people calm and everything in order? And this is one of those chapters. And another chapters like the last one, it's about how to live to how the individual should live to find inner peace and fulfillment. So this one is kind of a, like I said, it's about how to govern. So that way it says, therefore the wise governs by emptying the hearts and filling up the bellies. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, emptying the heart. To understand this, you have to know that in Chinese traditional thinking, the mind resides inside of the heart. Okay, so emptying the heart means to calm the mind and to not have unhealthy desires inside of you. Emptying the heart means basically being free from selfish desires. Okay, so this refers to the first three lines. Keep your heart free from desires, if you don't want your heart to become confused. So, and filling up the bellies means that instead of putting unhealthy desires inside of your heart, which leads to confusion, you should take care about what is most important, which is, of course, filling up the bellies. So taking care of your basic needs, of that which is really important. Okay. And the next sentence is quite similar. By weakening the will and strengthening the bones, it's basically the same. Like weakening the will means like if you want something, if you desire something, you should train yourself in not being too eager to get that. Okay, so you should train yourself in becoming less thirsty, so to speak. So again, weakening the will, but strengthening the bones. Okay, so again, not focus too much on the outside world, but focus on strengthening your inner self, your bones. Okay, that is symbolic for the bones. Belong to the essence in Chinese thinking and Chinese medicine. So, and essence means the deepest inside of you, the real core. So, weakening the will, weakening what you want in the outside realm, but strengthening the bones. So, strengthening what should be your stable core. Okay. The next sentence. Therefore, the wise governs by keeping the people free of knowledge and desires. So this is also not meant in a negative way, like keeping people stupid. That's not what is meant, but what is meant is knowledge in the same sense in which the Bible describes it in the Genesis chapter. I think in the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Genesis, it is said that the snake is the most intelligent or the most knowing of all animals. And of course, the snake is the one that, through manipulating Eve, the snake is bringing sin to the world. So, and that means is bringing problems to the world, which has been beforehand peaceful and nice. So, and this kind of knowledge, the knowledge that leads you to have ideas which you then follow, which lead to bad outcomes. Okay, and as you might know, like when people, not every idea is a good one, okay? Actually, most ideas we have are bad ones. So it's very important to not run after every idea. And that is what is meant here. So keep the people free of thinking too much. I would maybe put it that way. And desires, which are very often related, right? So you think about something, you develop a desire, and then you go after it. Which is in a classical Taoist sense, like I explained beforehand, not a good idea, because your heart gets distracted from what is really important. And then the last sentence in this paragraph, by keeping those who know from acting it out. Therefore, the wise governs by keeping those who know from acting it out. So basically, it's kind of like every sentence is pointing to the same point in the end. So it's always about, if you have desires, if your heart is full with something you long for, something you want in the outside world, you are not focused on the important things. So what you want is, as a good governor or emperor or official, you want your people to not fall into this trap of wanting too much, desiring too much, following that, acting on that. Because like it is said in the first 3 sentences, this would likely would likely lead to fighting, stealing, and becoming confused. Okay, and that's what you don't want as a good leader. Okay. So I repeat that last. Therefore, the wise governs by emptying the hearts and filling up the bellies, by weakening the will and strengthening the bones, by keeping the people free of knowledge and desires, and by keeping those who know from acting it out. Okay. So, and to further explain this last sentence, you could take once more the Genesis example. Like the snake tells Eve to not trust God's word, but to dismiss God's word and take the apple and eat it. So, and this is what is meant by keep those who know from acting it out. Like, only because you know doesn't mean that it's a good idea to act in that way. In the Genesis example, it would have been better if Eve just, she could have asked God beforehand, right? Like, well, the snake said, just eat the apple, it doesn't matter. But as we know in the story, Eve eats the apple, and then Adam does, and then they get thrown out of paradise. So it's a quite similar symbolism in this chapter. And then comes the last, which is again like in chapter 2, which is a description of the Wu Wei principle. Acting without doing invariably leads to peace. So, and here we have again this wonderful idea of Wu Wei, not acting or not doing, which is that if you're calm in your heart and your heart is not stirred, your heart is not confused because you did not fill it up with desires, longings, ideas, knowledge, okay? Then you are able to not act by your will, or you're not tempted to act on your own whim, but instead you will be able to notice just the right moment for things, and then everything will happen naturally and without force. If you remember in the last, when I talked about the chapter 2, the same image has been described there. Okay, so it's about not acting, and the best way to get into that state of mind is to not lay eyes on desirable things, not overrating the virtues and able, and not overvaluing precious goods. Okay, you can, like it is said in the second chapter, you can take all these things and use them and enjoy them as well, but don't think those things are what is really important. Because if you do that, if you confuse the real goodness in your heart with outside goodness in the world, then you're going downhill. Okay? Acting without doing invariably leads to peace. Okay? This is the idea here. Okay. As always, I hope you enjoyed my little interpretation of the third chapter, and I hope you join me for the fourth chapter. Have a nice day and see you. Bye bye.